Hello and welcome to the Miscast table. My name is Mons, and today we're gonna take a look at all the recent news we have received about Warhammer the Old World. So we did a video a few months ago summarizing everything that Games Workshop has released about Old World from its announcement in 2019 up until the end of June this year. So if you haven't been following the news that closely over the years or just need a refresher, I do suggest that you watch that video first. The link's in the description down below. But now, let's get into the video. And I do think that we have to start with the most important news, and that is that Warhammer the Old World has finally received a release date. Or well, maybe not an exact date, but we at least have a time period in which it will be released. At Warhammer Day this year, the 14th of October, Games Workshop did announce that the Old World is going to be released in early 2024. And that it will be one of the first releases in that year. There is also this picture claiming to show a now deleted tweet from Games Workshop that says "Be ready for February 2024" with a picture of the Old World logo. Now I did not see this tweet myself, so I cannot claim with 100% certainty that it is real, but you also don't have to be a rocket scientist to deduct that one of the first releases of the year will put you in that time period of 2024. March or February being the most likely, since the wording one of the first releases implies that there will be earlier releases in 2024 before the Old World is released. And that does put us about 3 to 5 months away from release at this time. And for people like me who's waited for the game since 2019, 3 to 5 months waiting time doesn't seem like that big of a deal. And I must admit, I'm really happy that it's finally happening. The game is finally here. It's right around the corner. But the release date was not the only thing that was revealed at Warhammer Day this year. They also revealed Bretonnia's entire launch range. Some of the models are returning kits, some of them are returning models but with new sculpts, and some are entirely new models with entirely new sculpts. Models that did not exist in Warhammer Fantasy. We have the Lord on Pegasus that you can either build as a Duke or a Baron. And the Duke is more high ranking than the Baron, so I guess that the Duke is the Lord slot while the Baron is a hero. And you can also build this like a standard bearer. And I have to say the model is really cool, and I'm definitely picking one of these up when they are released. They also revealed Knights of the Realm on foot. These are your typical heavy hitting infantry. And while the models look really cool, they are also incredibly detailed. And for some, that's a great thing. But for me personally, I like models with a little bit less detail because it makes them easier to paint. And ease of painting is a big thing when you're probably gonna be painting at least 20 of these. We also gotta look at some of the returning kits. Men-at-Arms, Knights of the Realm that you can also build as Knight-Errants, Pegasus Knights, Field Trebuchet, and Peasant Bowmen. And I really do wonder what's going to happen with the secondary market when these are released. And I know that Bretonnia models have been getting kind of expensive over the years. I, for example, bought an entire Tomb King's army a few years ago, and that was far from cheap. But I assume that the release of these kits is going to bring down the price on the second-hand market quite a bit. So people that have gotten into investing into old kits might take a loss here. We also gotta look at the Bretonnian Sorceress, a handmaiden of the Lady. And as of late, Games Workshop has definitely gotten better at sculpting women, as we can see as well with Lady Elise Ducard. A lot of the time, the female Warhammer characters can look quite manly, for the lack of a better word, but that is not the case here, which is great. Aside from that, the range consists of other models that we have already seen. The Standard Bearer, and the Questing Knight Paladin on foot. And I expect the entire Tomb King's range will be revealed in the near future. And I do have to say that the models for Bretonnia, they look great. It also covers most of the models that are playable in 8th edition. But there are a few models that have been left out. The Green Knight, Questing Knights, and Yeoman, to name a few of them. And I do hope that these models will receive rules in Warhammer the Old World. For those of us that have collected these models since before, even if Games Workshop, at least initially, will not be selling these models. And all in all, the information that we got at Warhammer Day was great. But there is one thing that bothers me a little bit, and that is the fact that we've not yet gotten a lot of information about the rules. I mean, the models look great, but if the rules are not, it won't matter. The old world could do just fine with bad models as long as the rules are great. But a game with good models and bad rules, not so much. So while getting to see some of the models makes me excited, I am way more excited to see something more about the rules. Because the game's success depends on the rules, not on the models, especially for a game with the history that Warhammer Fantasy have. Games Workshop also did a development diary in July of this year where they said the following. For several months, the designers regularly assembled to play games of every edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So it definitely does seem like the development team has taken a lot of time and effort in immersing themselves in the rules of Warhammer Fantasy. And that's a great thing. But I also hope that they have been following the discussion that's been going on in the community, to really find out what the loyal audience of Warhammer Fantasy actually enjoy about the game and about the rule set. Because I do believe that the game's chance for success is quite low if they do not manage to win over the current Warhammer Fantasy community with the rule set for the old world. I for one believe that Games Workshop know what they are doing here, and I believe they have done their research, and I do expect the rules to be solid. And in this development diary from July is also the only place where we get a glimpse into the new rules. But I must admit that it's not much. They say that the rules encourage wide units, but how many ranks deep you want your units is up to the player. This might be referring to some kind of horde bonus if your unit is wide enough, like in 8th edition for example. They also state that you will be able to field units of different sizes and that you will have a large number of choices to customize your character when building a list. And I have to say that magical items on characters is one of my favorite things about Warhammer Fantasy, so the fact that character customization is returning is a great thing. Perhaps the biggest change we see in this development diary is towards the magic. Wizards now seem to be able to cast spells in multiple different phases throughout the game, not only in the magic phase. And that the positioning of the wizard is more important now than ever. If this is a good change or not, we'll have to see, but I also feel like this is one of those topics that really divides the community. We have like one half of the community that is very traditional and will probably be quite happy if Games Workshop just released 6th edition all over again. No changes, only the stuff from the good old days. And then we have the other camp that is fine with changes as long as the soul and heart of the game stays the same. And I have to say, for myself, I'm part of the second camp. I mean, 6th edition, 8th edition, Warhammer Armies project, they're all great game systems, but they're not perfect. And some things, especially magic, is due for a change. Warhammer Armies project, for example, greatly improved the magic phase in my opinion, but even then it still had its problems. And Games Workshop also say in this post that these exciting game mechanics and many more besides, combined with classic elements of a beloved game, gives players both old and new plenty to consider when planning their armies and mastering their tactics. So that does tell us that we have to be prepared for some change. And I for one am not negative to changes as long as the heart and the soul of the game stays the same. But no matter which camp you belong to, I guess we have to wait and see until the game comes out and we can try it for ourselves before we make a judgment. And the final change mentioned in this post is the changes to combat resolution, fleeing and overrunning. And I'll read a quote from this post. Units that lose a round of combat will often give ground reluctantly rather than immediately breaking and fleeing, while the winner can advance and press their advantage. Players will quickly learn, however, that a cunning enemy will use this push and pull of battling units to lay traps, and the advancing unit runs a risk of exposing a vulnerable flank to a well-timed countercharge. So overrunning and destroying a unit seems to be a thing of the past. A unit seems to instead be pushed back when it loses combat. And for me personally, I quite like the current system we have in 8th edition with fleeing and overrunning. And that is because close combat is easily the most time consuming part of a game of Warhammer Fantasy. And I do fear that this change will lead to more turns of close combat and therefore prolonging the games. However, it does also mean that you get to play with some of your units more. The feeling when you lose a round of close combat on turn 2 with your biggest block and it gets overrun and destroyed, it's not a great one. I just hope that this change does not prolong the games too much. I mean, a game of Warhammer Fantasy is already like 2 or 3 hours, and adding to that could be a bit much. And that is all of the information that we have gotten since last time. And I'm sure that now that the game is getting quite close to release, that Games Workshop will ramp up the pace of which they are releasing information. So I do hope that we get some more stuff on the rules shortly, as that will be the deciding factor for the Old World's success. So I'm gonna leave this with some questions to all of you. What do you think about the information that Games Workshop have released so far? Are you for or against the rules changes? And what do you still hope to see from Warhammer the Old World? Please write your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. And if you would like to see more Old Worlds content in the future, consider subscribing. That's all for today. See you next time. Bye.